Welcome to the Prosperity Blogcast, where we have just one goal: to help you live a life of prosperity. Here now is your host.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. It's 12:15. We're here for our lunch and learn. These run about a half an hour, so we should be done by 12:45. My name is Terry Herr. For those of you who don't know me, I'm a certified financial planner and managing partner here at Herr Capital Management. Melissa Osika, my business partner, was unable to join us because of a previous commitment, but she'll be back next month. So be sure to tune in for that on our market update. Just a quick overview. Herr Capital Management is a comprehensive financial planning firm. While a main component of what we do is investment, we take a coordinated approach to look at everything from insurance to tax. That includes understanding the expenses you'll face in retirement, understanding how to protect your assets. One of the things that make us different from other firms is our people, our practice, and our process. So we're a team of credentialed advisors that work as a team with every client. We're a professional firm with a family-like atmosphere. So in short, we limit our size so that we can get to know our clients. We are unbiased, independent, and have created processes to help our clients in every phase of life. So today we have Patrick Kane, Senior Wealth Management Specialist at Putnam Funds. He's responsible for developing and delivering wealth management related content, educational programs, and marketing initiatives to financial advisors. Previously, Patrick served as an associate consultant, an internal consultant, and a regional associate. And so he's been in the investment industry since he joined Putnam in 2013. And just before I turn it over to Patrick, I want to give you a quick list of the upcoming lunch and learns that we have. We encourage you to share these with others. You'll also be able to find them on hercapital.com. In the next few days, they'll be posted under our events tab. October 21st, we're going to present a market update. November 18th, we're going to do something specifically for women's life events, geared specifically towards women. And then in December, we're going to do a tax update. So with that, I'm going to turn over the screen to Patrick and let Patrick take it over. Patrick, it should be coming to you now.
All right, great. I will show my screen now. And let me know if this is coming through and you can see the presentation in front of us here.
Yep, we see it.
All right, great. So thank you for that introduction. My name is Patrick Kane, and I am a Senior Wealth Specialist with Putnam Investments. So just like Terry said, my job dives deep into all aspects of financial planning, everything from saving for college, planning for retirement, passing assets on to the next generation. And I think really today's presentation, Strategies to Safeguard Your Wealth, actually really does a great job encompassing all of them. Because really, I want you to think about how much you have been able to save and put away, whether that's through your business, whether that's through retirement accounts, whether that's through savings, college investments, or equity in your home. And now what would happen if you were to get sued there? Now, we want to make sure that your assets are going to be protected under a litany of different circumstances. So what we're going to do today is actually walk through all of these different strategies around asset protection, making sure that, we do have a protection plan when it comes to place for our homes, cars, possessions, household appliances. And I think that's, at the basic level, but we also need to start thinking about how this asset protection could apply to our wealth as well. Now, when we take a look here, lawsuits are absolutely unpredictable. These are actually just some of the 10 most popular headlines from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce on these unpredictable lawsuits. You can see everything from man trips over a discarded Christmas tree, painful handshake in Palm Beach County, and right here in Boston, Massachusetts, this individual sued Dunkin' Donuts because he was getting margarine, not butter. And he sued because he was unhappy with it. So it just goes to show just how wide varying these lawsuits truly can be. And here in America, per capita, we have the most lawyers per person in any nation of the world. So it's really just goes to show how likely these lawsuits can pop up. And since you can sue anyone for just about any reason whatsoever without actually having a good one, it really just goes to show how much asset protection is going to be critical. And there's multiple different avenues that we can be pursuing here. And really, I would say that everyone here is going to need a plan in some way, shape, or form. You don't necessarily need insurance for every one of these things that we mentioned, but having a plan around them is going to be critical. Owning a home, owner's insurance, I think that's a basic first step here, but how do we take it one step further? Do we need any additional homeowner's insurance? Just like we saw with the previous screen, if you take your Christmas tree out, you leave it on the sidewalk and someone trips over it, well, now all of a sudden that could potentially open your home up to some liability. Could you possibly be in a high-risk profession? Are you a dentist, a doctor, an attorney? These are some of these higher risk professions. Additionally, if you are working on homes, carpenter, I would say that all of these professions may need to have an additional degree of asset protection just because of the high risk nature of that profession. And business owners, if we have any business owners on the line here, I would say that it is absolutely critical to take a look at how your business is going to be affecting your personal assets. Do you have your company set up in an LLC? Are you able to ensure that your private assets aren't going to be impacted by the ownership of your business? And as a business owner, you might be laser focused on trying to grow the business, but you're really exposed to a bunch of unique risks, whether that's from employees, whether that's from customers, or actually other individuals that you may work with. Now, I think you can take it one step further here. If you have rental or real estate properties, maybe a vacation home down the shore, I would say that that is something that could also be considered. Maybe it might be worthwhile to throw it into an LLC, separate that from your personal returns, especially if we are going to be renting that out. Plus, I would say there's also other advantages of getting it out of the estate and having it inside of an LLC. But if you do have, significant personal assets here, are those vulnerable to any of these potential changes? Do you drive a car? Do you have a teenage son? Or do you have pets? I mean, unfortunately, one of my best friends growing up, he actually got attacked by a dog and ended up taking out a little chunk of his mouth here. That's a 5-figure medical bill as a result of that change. My guess is that if you do have maybe an aggressive dog or even just a dog in general, you may want to consider some of these additional asset protections. But as we go through this presentation here, you can see how asset protection is just one part of your comprehensive financial plan. Now, I might actually argue that a lot of these can be rolled into asset protection. Insurance, that is absolutely one way to go about it. Maybe we're putting money away into a 529. Well, as we'll actually talk about a little bit later in this presentation, that serves as asset protection because those cannot be touched by creditors after a certain period of time. When we take a look at things like estate planning, getting assets out of your estate but still retaining control might be an issue here. Making sure that we get those assets inside of trusts could be one way we actually protect ourselves. And then once we're planning for retirement income, I think when we're putting money away for retirement plans, any money you have inside of an ERISA plan is actually going to be fully protected from bankruptcy proceedings. Now, the ultimate goal of minimizing taxes here should be part of your comprehensive plan, along with saving for retirement and investment, but they all have a varying degree of asset protection. And that's why I think it's going to be so important that you work with your advisor and, all right, do I have all of these things put together, and or do we have assets exposed to risk that we may not have talked about? Now, I would argue here that at a simpler level here, it's just a two-part plan to make sure you're protecting your assets. First way you want to go about it is making sure you're minimizing your risk now. And then second, making sure we actually layer on a protection plan in place before something happens. I would say that, this is going to be absolutely critical before it happens as well. And actually, I was just going through this with my sister, for example. She actually just went to college in Syracuse University. And one of the things we talked about was a healthcare proxy. Now, if you have any kids heading off to school this year, I would say it's absolutely a requirement to get something like a healthcare proxy signed. What this does is actually allow my parents, should something happen to my sister, whether that's COVID or something else, they would actually be able to make medical directions on her behalf. So whether that's medication, medical decisions, or just being able to talk to a doctor about the situation or the status of that individual is going to be critical. And actually, we have all 50 states and their healthcare proxies available on our website. If you'd like, I can actually send over a link so you can make sure you have those. But when we're taking a look at what asset protection is not, it is not an excuse or a vehicle for evading taxes. Cryptocurrency, something like that, that is not a way to avoid taxes, that is not asset protection. We are not looking for ways to hide these assets from spouses, from the government, or from potential creditors. And we are certainly not thinking of asset protection as a way to defraud these creditors out of assets that would have been resulted in their taking in anyway. So when we first just take a step back, thinking about, all right, hey, well, just what do I have at risk? A simple exercise here is to take all of your assets, minus away what you owe. Well, that'll tell you how many assets that you actually have exposed to risk. And we actually want to work making sure those assets become creditor protected. And as soon as they are, we can actually back them out. That will allow us to see what's actually at risk here. And ultimately, once we know what's at risk, we can actually build a specific plan around it. So everyone's protection plan may actually look a little bit different here. Now, I think basic components, it's going to be taking a look at things like insurance. And actually, I would say insurance is playing, maybe some of the largest roles in a financial plan that it has in decades. Things like titling your assets are going to be absolutely critical, especially in light of some of the legislation that has been passed over the last several years. Here, I'm thinking the Secure Act. If you do leave your IRA to someone who is not a spouse, well, now they have 10 years to pay taxes over that, over your IRA. Now, if you do not name someone as a beneficiary on your IRA, that will instead go back to your estate. Your estate will pay taxes over a 5-year period as opposed to 10, which could have been split over multiple returns. So I think titling of your assets is a basic part of this protection plan. And I'd definitely be talking to your advisor about making sure that A, those beneficiary accounts are designated, but B, how do we take it one step further? And who can pay lower tax rates on those assets, whether it's you or maybe your end beneficiary? And a little bit earlier, we also mentioned how saving for retirement can actually serve as a way of protecting your assets. And we'll actually walk through just how much that protection is. But I want you to think about your retirement savings, whether it's in a 401k or an IRA, that you will get a level of protection associated with them from the federal level and also from the state level as well. And I think like life insurance and annuities are absolutely going to be playing a larger role going forward, especially helping with those beneficiaries with liquidity events. And they actually can get those assets out of your estate as well. Now, on the right-hand side of your screen, you are going to see some of these more complex techniques. If you do have some of these special situations that we talked about prior, maybe if you own your own business, maybe you have, if you're a dentist, you own the building that you're in, as well as some of the equipment that you own. You can actually put each one of those into a separate LLC. Protect your original business from some of these other ones. Stop creditors from being able to take away your building or your equipment. Additionally, trusts are a great way to really incorporate into financial plans here if you are worried about asset protection. Now, when we do take a look at trusts, there's going to be a trade-off here. Now, when you do put assets inside of a trust, the best part is those assets are out of your estate. They cannot be attached by creditors. The downside here is that once you put assets inside of the trust tax rates are significantly higher than marginal tax rates for individuals. $13,000 worth of income inside of a trust will get you right up to that top marginal rate of 39.6, or will be 39.6. It's currently 37. But incorporating your business is another way that you can help shift that risk off of yourself and onto your LLC. And when we go through here, I think it's about starting with the basics, making sure you can identify and correctly correct some of those property risks, making sure you're reviewing your coverage here, making sure that you actually are going to be protected from the risks that you see, whether that be things like flood insurance, umbrella insurance. Maybe you're worried about insurance for a car with a kid that's going to be driving as a teen. Umbrella coverage is a great way to have overarching liability coverage that may not be picked up from a home or other insurance. And things like applying for a homestead exemption. These are great ways to start with some of the basics here. Here in Massachusetts, the homestead exemption is $125,000 automatically. If you do a file for one of the homestead exemptions, it's $500,000. I think in Indiana, it's 60% of your home's value, or $45,000, whichever is left. And then in Illinois, I think it's something like $10,000 a year. Now, I would say it's also going to be worthwhile, and we be careful how we title those assets. Now, I was working with a client. Unfortunately, she was a single mom, but she passed away and did not name her 2 kids as beneficiaries on her IRA. And like I said before, that reverts back to the estate, which could have been split over 2 returns over a 10-year time frame over some of the lowest assets, or over some of the lowest brackets, as opposed to a 5-year period for her estate. So I think making sure that assets are titled, beneficiaries are designated, is going to be absolutely critical here. At the end of the day, making sure your advisor is aware of any of these changes, whether that's individuals move out, whether you're taking care of a parent, for example, or you're going to have new kid, you're having a child, for example. These are all things that I would want to make sure your advisor is up to date on so that they can plan around some of these changes. Now, as we talked about here before, your retirement savings, are they protected? And the answer is yes. And you can see actually just how much they would be protected. If you have a 401k, a pension, a profit sharing plan, or an employee stock option plan, you actually get full protection for bankruptcy here if you do file. If you have a rollover IRA, a SEP IRA, a simple, most of those individual 401ks, you do get full protection if you file for bankruptcy. If you have not, you don't get protection from a federal level here, but you can see many states actually do offer bankruptcy protection. And for your traditional and Roth IRAs, $1 million if you do file for bankruptcy from the federal level. But actually, many of the states actually will offer some protection here as well from creditors. And like I talked about before, it's not just your retirement savings, it's also any money away that you put away for your children. Now, at the point of contribution here, if you made it less than a year ago, unfortunately, it would not be protected from those creditors. If it's made within a year, $5,000 would be protected. And you can see here, 720 days, you would get 100% protection on your 529 contribution. So that's why I think it's best to do this early. It's best to do this often if you think that there could be a potential for a creditor to attach themselves to your 529. And with life insurance and annuities here, no major protections under your federal law. Some states will actually offer this protection for your life insurance or annuities. Maybe they'll protect some of the cash value here. Maybe some of your annuities will be protected here just up to a small dollar amount. I will say it's not necessarily the most amount of money that's going to be protected here, whether that's an annuity or life insurance. So just be aware of those as well. Now, I do want to spend a minute here just in case we do have any business owners on the line here, but business owners, you're at risk of legal claims by patients, customers, employees, and without a formal business structure, your personal assets, they're going to be at risk if you're running a sole proprietorship. And this can absolutely be one of the most difficult decisions that you make, how you're going to structure your business, whether that's an S Corp, an LLC, or a sole proprietor. But I do want to spend a minute here walking through trusts to protect your assets, because there are multiple different types of trusts and avenues that we can go here, whether that's revocable or irrevocable trust, typically allowing you to just make distributions for the trust beneficiary. You can also take it one step further, take a look at foreign or offshore trusts. This is not a way to avoid taxes by any way, shape, or form here, but they will be outside of U.S. laws here, and it might be a little bit more difficult for creditors, or might be a little bit more expensive for them to target your assets here. But I would also say domestic asset protection trusts could definitely make sense here. These are going to be if you do want to protect your spouse or your house at the passing of that first spouse, and making sure that we're protecting those assets from creditors should there be an issue there. But at the end of the day here, I know we've went over a lot of information fairly quickly over the last 20 minutes. So I think I just want to leave you with this last part here, and just a simple action plan that you can be doing. First and foremost, at the end of the day, it's about meeting with your financial advisor, making sure that they are up to date on all of your changes, whether that's a new 529, a new kid coming in, whether we bought a new house, a vacation property, anything that might be at risk here. I think these are just simple conversations that you can have at year end to make sure, hey, we're just protected on all fronts here, whether that's our savings, whether that's our investments, or whether that's things like our home or property. Make sure you're reviewing those assets and determine, make sure you have an understanding of your net worth. I mean, as your net worth goes up, you're going to be exposed to these creditors a little bit more. You would imagine that high net worth individuals would face more creditor risk than someone who might not have as much to go after. But taking care of the basics, making sure you have insurance, making sure your assets are titled, making sure your beneficiaries are designated, make sure you identify and minimize any of these risks that we actually talked about here today. And as always, I think an attorney can be absolutely worthwhile to consult, making sure that you actually do have these protections, and talking to your advisor. He can absolutely help you with any of these questions that we might be able to talk about before we reach out to the attorney about protecting some of these here today. So I know we went through a lot of information fairly quickly. Maybe I'll just pause there, see if there are any questions, comments, concerns, gray areas, something I might be able to address in more detail. And if not, there is absolutely a handout included on your little file here. You can actually see we put together an asset protection checklist. So this will actually be able to help you at a high level. Just think about, hey, what do I have? What protection out there? And then what do we do to make sure that we can efficiently transfer those assets to the next generation? So feel free to encourage you to check that out. If you do have any questions, I'd be more than happy to go into that in more detail as well. But Terry, maybe I'll just pause there.
Sure. Yeah. So for any questions, if you would, just to overlap or to stop all the chatter and background noise, just type it into the chat button. I know we'll give a little bit extra time. Last month we cut it off a little early, and some questions came through after the fact, so I'll leave that open. But I just want to throw out a few things that you had mentioned, Patrick. I actually know somebody who was sued for a painful handshake. Kind of an interesting story. Somebody came into their place of work, introduced themselves, and left. The person thought that was kind of strange. Just made a note of it, kind of circumstances, and 3 months later he was sued for nerve damage. And it turned out the individual that came in was hustling, insurance fraud. He was going into businesses and suing different people for different reasons. So aggressive dog, we heard a dog barking. So, doggy Prozac is something that I know exists from some other clients who had an aggressive dog. The other thing I want to throw out is, and I think this is kind of interesting, in the event of a divorce, and it depends on the state you're at. Some states have what's called revocation upon divorce for beneficiaries. So beneficiary review is critical. If it's critical, something you should do annually anyway, but particularly in case of divorce, because in some states, an ex-spouse might actually get the money, or it may not be your current spouse that's going to get the money if you're remarried. So there's some really interesting things there that, it's often overlooked. We had a situation where some beneficiary contacted us where the owners of an account had successor owners, but the successor owners had predeceased them by several years, and they never did anything about it. So now there's substantial paperwork involved to try to figure out who's supposed to own this account, because it was sort of a unique setup. But with that, let me look and see if we have any questions. I don't see any questions coming through here, so I will give it another minute or two just to see. But while I'm doing that, hopefully on your screen you'll see our next couple of events coming up. October 21st, we have market and economic updates. We're just going to kind of talk about what happened in the markets over the last quarter, where we think we're going to be going forward. November 18th is a women's life events, where we're going to talk about different scenarios and how to handle them. And then December 16th, I think this will be a good one in December on taxes. We're going to talk about all the different changes taking place in the tax code, what actually got accomplished in 21, what we might see going forward. So I think that will be a worthwhile presentation to attend. And again, I would ask, anybody who has the ability to share these dates with other people. And we do have a question come through here now. So please explain negative tax aspect of trust again. So I think what she's asking is just to understand the tax aspects of the trust and where you run into problems, perhaps maybe with a revocable versus an irrevocable trust.
Yeah, so definitely with the trust, there's a couple of things to be aware of. So revocable and irrevocable is whether or not we can, kind of take it back or undo it here. Now, what I did talk about earlier was once you put assets inside of a trust, one of the things to be aware of is they have a much higher or much more aggressive tax rate than what you would have as an individual. So as you put assets inside of a trust, so let's say maybe you put dividend paying stock, you put a house and some other assets in there as well. That is going to be, once you get income above a certain threshold, I believe it's a little above 13,000, you're going to be at the top marginal rate. So right where an individual making 600,000 would be paying 39.6%, only 13,000 for the trust would get you to that top rate.
Yeah, and I think the distinction, Patrick, if I can just jump in here, the distinction is when that tax rate applies. So while you're alive with the irrevocable trust, you're going to be taxed at your current rates. It's when you're deceased and the trust is continuing as an irrevocable trust, you're going to be taxed at those higher rates. So I want to make sure that there's a distinction between when those rates are going to apply. If it's something you can change and you control, it's going to be taxed as if you own it, not at a trust tax rate. But the minute something happens and triggers within the trust, I think that might be where she was going with this question. But
and I will say it's also probably worthwhile if you do have a trust as a beneficiary of an IRA, for example, definitely going to want to review that with your advisor, with your attorney to see whether or not it still makes sense to have it. Because unfortunately, because of the Secure Act and some of the changes there, depending on the verbiage inside of the trust, it could affect how A, tax efficient it is in the first place, and then B, whether or not your end beneficiary would be able to access it. Because in the past, it used to say, all right, well, I'll leave my IRA to this trust, and then my trust will pay out to this beneficiary my RMDs every year. Well, now there's no quote unquote RMDs every year. It's truly just one on the 10th year of the entire account balance. So it's not necessarily going to be tax efficient, and it's not going to necessarily provide that same payment to beneficiaries as it was before. So just review your trust language to see whether or not A, it still makes sense, or B, if there does need to be some changes made.
yeah, I'll just add that there's been significant tax law changes that pertains, with beneficiaries' ability to stretch out distributions, as well as the trust law. So that's something that if you've got those things in place and haven't talked to us about it, reach out and we'll take a look at it, see if we can figure out what's going on with your situation. I don't see any other questions. We've got about 2 minutes left on our time slot. So again, I'll just encourage everyone to share our events. And Patrick, unless you have some closing thoughts, excuse me, we'll wrap this up.
Perfect.
All right, everyone, please have a safe and wonderful weekend. Thanks for joining us again.